Okay, good afternoon. I want to tell you all about a program that I'm particularly excited about, and they said, hey, tell us one of your DevOps success stories. I said, I got the perfect program, and they said, but you've got 10 minutes. And I said, I get so carried away and excited about this, I have a hard time getting a sentence out in 10 minutes. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a program that we won a couple of years ago. It's an agency within the federal government, and they were faced with a couple of challenges, and I know that every one of you all have come across a few times before. One is we have to do more, the second is we have to do it with less, and the third is we have to do it better. So do more with less and do it better. And so we looked at their environment, we had a conversation with the customer, and I think this is what really made this a success, is that we had a true collaboration with the customer, but I'll get into more of that in a second. But we looked at their environment and they said, okay, we've embraced cloud to deploy our applications, that's great. We've embraced Agile, we're doing Agile development through our teams, that's great, but we still need to take another step. And so we looked at the environment and we said, okay, you've embraced cloud for the application deployment, but we haven't really leveraged cloud fully to make the development process better. So in short, this was a natural fit for DevSecOps. And so I'm going to go a little bit backwards here, and I'm going to tell you some of the things that they achieved up front, and then I'll tell you some of the things that went into them. There were a lot of different achievements in only 8 months' time. I was actually shocked. I was involved in the proposal, and I came back and talked to the folks on the program. It was amazing they got this done so quickly. First of all, and I think this is a very big thing, they can completely deploy the system with a script, just by literally pushing a button. This isn't just deploying the code onto the servers. This is completely provisioning the underlying servers, the network architecture, everything in the cloud, all automated with a push button. And that is kind of the holy grail. That's what you want, because you're guaranteed you start off with a fresh environment, always from the same state, every time you do a deployment and push the software out. So they can do this in 1 to 2 hours, literally push a button. They can also destroy the old instances in about 30 minutes. So when they're done with the release, they completely destroy and deprovision the infrastructure as well. And here's another key thing. A big problem they were faced with is ATO, as Brigitte mentioned earlier. ATO is just a real long pole in the tent, and that is everything would grind to a halt at the end of development, and it would go into this black hole called security, and then it would pop out with either actions they had to take or an approval or what have you. So what this program did, and it was done in conjunction with that collaboration with the customer, is we embraced the security team. And that doesn't mean we just met with them once in a while. This means we talked to them before development even began for this project. And we said, let's hear your concerns. I want to know what your artifacts are that you need us to produce. And what we did was we set up a completely transparent environment where we frequently invited security and representatives from security into our daily scrums even. And so what this all resulted in, long story short, is security felt so comfortable with what we were doing that they actually granted us ATO before the software development was complete. That's the first time I know that that's ever happened in any of the programs. So not only was there no delay, it actually got done early. And it's the sharing of information and the approaching of the security team as a partner, not just as a separate group that we have to deal with, but a true partnership. There were also a couple of technical milestones. One of the first programs to achieve ATO using the AWS key management services, in which case some of the storage was encrypted, the database was encrypted, and so forth. So there were a couple of technical firsts. The other technical aspect, which I think is very, very important, is the adoption of microservices, and I'm going to have a slide on that shortly. So let's talk about a little bit what made some of these things possible. And let's see. We're not going forward. Okay, can someone advance the slide, or are we kind of stuck? Well, let's go ahead and go further. There we go. Okay. So we talked about the customer completely embracing the cloud. And so they looked at the cloud. There was, in this particular government organization, there was some reluctance to go to the cloud. It's new. It changes the way we do business and so forth. They embraced it from the front. And so there was no hesitation there. And secondly, there was a high level of trust between the customer and the contractor, GDIT. And when you have that level of trust, that's when you can form the right kind of partnership that enables innovation and progress. And I always like to think of this as, I think that the people really are the first thing you have to think about. The technology changes all the time. By the time you want to do any initiative, chances are the technology's already changed from the time you first thought about it to the time you're implementing it. So the people is what you have to think about, because it takes the longest time to change the people, the way they think, the culture. And so that's what changes. And I always remember Grace Hopper's comment, you manage things, you lead people. And that's what happened on this program. We got that buy-in from the customer, and we had a strong vision that we communicated to everyone what was possible with the cloud and DevOps. And the customer agreed and supported that mission or vision. So that is the key more than anything. And I think in a lot of ways I could have had these same slides 25 years ago for development initiatives, because it's only the technology that's changed. AWS Cloud, the security requirements were managed the same way we do feature requirements, and that is they go in the backlog, they're rated for complexity, and they're allocated to sprints. And then finally, the adoption of microservices, and this is what I want to talk about. This is really, I would say, one of the few technical things that really help enable DevOps well, and that is you have a huge monolithic application. By definition, it's large, it's complex, it takes a long time to develop. A lot of times it's manual, or maybe only limited bits are automated. By definition, a good engineering approach to taking any large problem and solving it is breaking it down into smaller bits, and that is what microservices do. Microservices allow you to break things into small pieces, smaller individual problems that you can solve more quickly and develop and deploy more quickly. So that fits in very nicely with DevSecOps, because what we do is we deploy smaller batches more quickly. And that's what helps enable DevSecOps. Okay, so the other nice piece of this, there's a lot of other advantages that microservices enable us to do, but that is the big thing. So if you have the luxury, especially of greenfield development, where you're starting an application from scratch, look at microservices carefully as one of the capabilities you need to understand. For next steps, these applications in this environment are expected to have a long service life. Some of the improvements they're looking to do was increase the source code scanning with some of the capabilities, some of the tools out there, and then expanding this initiative to the rest of the suite of applications in their environment. And so I was very, very excited to hear about this program and the progress that they have made, just simply because of the speed and the rapidity which they've been able to accomplish it. So full DevSecOps can be achieved in the right setting, but as you would expect, the biggest problems are not the technology. It's the people getting the buy-in and building the excitement around it so that you get people to embrace it. And under those circumstances, DevSecOps does live up to its promises. Collaboration with the extended team is crucial. They're not just separate groups you need to touch base with, but embrace them and work with them. And be careful when incurring technical debt along the way. In other words, if you take shortcuts, chances are you're going to have to come back and spend more time to fix those shortcuts than when you took the shortcuts. So be careful about that. It's a lot harder to correct after the fact. So that's it. I want to introduce Scott here, who's going to tell you another success story.
All right, thanks, Dennis. Appreciate it.
Okay.
So again, we're here to talk today about the Naval Information Warfare Center Pacific. It's a contract we got recently through GDIT. If you're not familiar, NIWC used to be SPAWAR. So if that's a more familiar term, that's what that is. It's a fairly major change that happened on that side for us. So what the program is about really is us being a reseller of cloud services and supporting professional services underneath that. It is IaaS, PaaS, SaaS, all the type of things you'd expect, utilizing our partnerships we have with the various cloud providers out there to give the government full advantage and all those type of things. We of course have the discounts of our labor rates, et cetera. So far we have been tasked primarily under the BPA with three major areas. We have established a broker bridge portal for the government. We have established a remote desktop solution for the government, and we have recently launched our SecDevOps infrastructure as well. Now, I'm saying SecDevOps, and I know everyone in the industry is going, wait, that's not right. My gentleman here from Red Hat said SecDev, SecOps, Sec. Please don't say that to my customer, because we'll start saying that. But SecDevOps is the idea that security is first always when you're talking from a DoD perspective. So what they approached us about, what they wanted to accomplish was the ability to provide cloud services as a broker for the Navy and their various customers underneath them. This had to be something that meant they were able to do through the various consumers to have the right policies in place. Security, we had to be SRG, IL4 and 5 compliant. If you don't know what that means, it's basically just short of classified. We always say 4 or 5 because 5 has implications of dedicated hardware that can really drive up the cost. So 4 is nice if you can do it, but we can support 5 as well. Had to do connectivity from the data research and engineering network into the various cloud providers. We had to provide an environment which was able to support things such as containerized solutions, cyber suite, all the things you'd expect in a mature development environment that would move forward. So this is the research arm of the Navy, that's what we're saying. So there is some flexibility, but all this has to go to production, so we have to meet those requirements. And then of course we have all the various managed services, help desk that you'd expect as well in that type of environment. So how do we get there? Well, it started out as we had this contract, and a couple of people here with me, Samir and Rick, visited out, and we took a trip out to San Diego, and we sat in a 3-day workshop for as long as the government would tolerate it, and really dug into, it's almost a sprint zero planning session at that point. We talked about requirements. It was interesting for me, I come from an operational background, so I'm thinking availability, I'm thinking reliability, I'm thinking performance. They're talking about the money has to be right regardless of anything we do. So it's not that the other things didn't matter, but it was a great session because we learned a lot about what they were concerned about, we're concerned about. We started off with a fairly traditional weekly call, but very quickly realized, as the last bullet says, they didn't want to wait and do a lot of requirements gathering, and they didn't want to wait around and do a lot of planning to get started. They wanted to go now. So that's when we came forward and said, let's do this in an agile fashion. They had some, their customers who were developers knew about it. We had experience. Jay Olson's team, of course, brings a lot of knowledge in that area to us. So we stood up a agile platform in order to get to this, all the various solutions we have. We actually had a customer with exciting, was a success story for me, where he initially, when I said, let's do stand up some sprint planning and those type of things, his reaction was like, I guess if that's what you do, that's fine. But he had his weekly calls, and about a month in, he says, I think I can cancel my weekly call, I think I can cancel some other things, and do it this way, and it worked out really well. So this is talking about the solutions, really talking to the portal. So what we were able to launch within a 3-month period of time was a portal using a COTS-based solution from Cherwell, who's actually one of our partners here today. That was fully CAC integrated, that was fully IL4 compliant, and that met the business requirements of the customer at the time. It was being used day one to start their customers ordering services through that broker. So it got rid of the email spreadsheet scenario that we had, of course, before that. It gave them traceability, gave them accountability, gave them all the things they needed, accountability to us and all the other people as well. Oops, I think I'm having, there we go. So as a reseller, certain things we bring to the table is our partnerships. We have great partnerships with all the cloud providers, Amazon and Microsoft, of course, being the premier ones today. We certainly have those relationships with Google, IBM, Oracle, and others as they become appropriate that we can leverage. I mentioned Cherwell, they're a great partner of ours as well. And then we have an alliance team, a couple of people here today that really, when we run into those issues where there's maybe a confusion or we're not sure where to go, they're the ones that can help point us in the right direction, make sure things go smoothly. So as a large integrator, both GDIT and previous to that CSRA, when it was a separate company, had done tremendous amount of work for the military. So we have those lessons learned. We understood how those organizations work. One thing we did that was interesting was we set up what they call professional services bundles, which is really a CLIN that they can order directly from us a certain amount of hours. If somebody wanted 40 hours just for a little advice, we can do that. You need several hundred hours, we can do that. We've had a couple of these actually grow into full-blown tasks as they hit that level of maturity. A couple of other things that we did that were interesting was we established a VDI solution, which is a Citrix-based solution in cloud. I'll show the dates on that in a second, but that also got stood up very quickly using the same methodology. It's completely in GovCloud, completely available from anywhere in the world, maybe not China and Russia, but pretty much everywhere else in the world. And what the use case that was always presented was a development team from some contractor needed 50 developers, 100 developers. They didn't want to issue 100 laptops, so they can actually order this as a service, and it is a monthly service, and use as long as they need it, and then they can discontinue later time. What also works out well with this is that myself at home, I actually use this on my personal laptop, and I'll use my corporate laptop next to me so I can kind of do both sides of the world. Some of our partners, you mentioned it, we do have partnerships across all the world. We have great alliance teams there. Red Hat has been a great partner for us in this particular endeavor. OpenShift is the underlying technology for our orchestration and SecDevOps, in addition to the various tools such as Ansible and things like that. And of course, we have a lot of the open standard tools as well. I do have a slide later on that shows the tool sets we're using in the SecDevOps environment. It is a bit of a shifting arena, as you can imagine, because we have a certain tools and people want more and different things, so we're always negotiating that. So again, it's a reiteration a little bit, but the innovative solutions we had it's three major areas. It's the NRDE Cloud Broker portal. It is the Skydesk solution, which is a CAC-enabled laptop. Any CAC-enabled laptop today, it's Windows and Mac, can get into an environment and start developing right away. And then the SecDevOps pipeline, which is the term our customer uses all the time is guardrails. And we talk about security, but it's also guardrails. So it's set up in such a way that, of course, you can go in, you can get to your Bitbucket, you can do testing initially, but if you can make it through our standardized pipeline when you think you're done, you're about 90% of the way to your ATO. And this is a look about DCAO, they've approved it. This all funders under the framework of what they call C2C 24, which is compiled to combat in 24 hours. Admiral Barrett out in NIWC Pacific has sponsored this. And the idea is that once you compile code, can you get it to a ship at sea in 24 hours to support their mission? Today, it's normally weeks and months. And we're not there today, but this is like a big step towards getting there. And once somebody figures out how to promote to ships in that short period of time, it's going to go a long way towards ensuring safety at minute sea. So some of our success stories, again, we delivered it within 3 months. Skydesk, we did an analysis of alternatives in January of 2018, did a proof of concept in March of 2018 using this methodology. So in that period of time, we were able to get the environment stood up in the cloud, get it working, integrated in with their AD. We didn't quite have CAC working there, but we did have AD authentication working at that time. And we had passed enough security checks from a development perspective, they're willing to let us move forward with the proof of concept to touch their real systems they use on a day-to-day basis. And then in addition to that, the actual solution was launched in June of 2018. What's coming is our next version, which will be a dedicated instance, which is almost like a portable laptop in cloud, a little more than we have today. For CSA 1.0, actually Red Hat did a demonstration in February of 2018, which kind of got them interested in the art of the possible for what can be done in this environment. They took it to a certain point, handed it off to us, we integrated it in with their development. In October of 2018 in McLean, we did a demonstration to some of the Admiralty at a DevOps conference to talk about what we had done and successfully ran an actual Navy application through. So MTC2, which is Maritime Command and Control 2, had a web map application that we actually compiled real time in front of the admirals and ran right there on the spot to show them how that would work. And then in February of last year, we launched 1.0. We're now looking at requirements for 1.1 and a 2.0 version as well. Some of the metrics for us, right now, that says 450 users on Skydesk. Actually, my latest and greatest numbers is 488. So those are 488 users from places as far away as Thailand and Japan that are actually using Skydesk to do work required to support the RDT environment. The portal has 40 active projects in it. There are actually 70 total projects, 40 of which are active right now. Mentioned we have 25 professional service bundles. That tends to be a moving number. That'll change almost day to day, but it's in that ballpark. And then we have This says 17 projects in CSA. It's actually 20. What's interesting is the user count went down, so it sounds like somebody was doing some cleanup on the user side. There's been some awards recognition to NIWAC. So 2 of the what they call Lightning Awards from the old SPAWAR organization were done for both the portal and Skydesk. GDIT was recognized with the Industry Innovation Award in 2018, and we did get a Team Excellence Award in 2019 for the overall program. So I've got the envelope, I think I'm 10, I know I've got the envelope position of briefing during lunch period, so I understand that. There are some other slides in here that are more on the backup, just some technical details of some of the things we talked about. This is interesting here because this does show the pipeline and how we have it set up, some of the tools we're using today. And and now, as again, we are negotiating with other vendors and looking at other opportunities always. So as I said, I think it was mentioned before, we're not taking questions here per se, but if you want to grab me or someone else in the team, we'd love to talk to you about it. And I think that's it.